Welcome back, everyone, to the Bank Customer Experience Summit podcast. I'm joined once again with Cook Solutions Group, and we're going to talk a little bit today about vendors and the advantages of picking one vendor over having a lot of different vendors for all your different banking or ATM needs. So I'm joined today by Scott Fieber and Brian Alfano. Great to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Great to be on.
Awesome. So I want to start with a little bit of an icebreaker. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and maybe your history of CSG, how you met, all that good stuff?
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I can start. My name is Brian Alfano. I'm Chief Digital Officer at OCCU in Eugene, Oregon. We're about a $3.5 billion credit union that is originally tied to the University of Oregon. And I have known the CSG team for about 20 years. I started as Brian Cook's banker way back in the day at Umpqua Bank. So I started on the bank side and then worked with him as a vendor there, and then moved on to a credit union called Unitas Credit Union out of Portland. And we did some innovative work with CSG to help pilot their SAN solution. And then moved to OCCU about 5.5 years ago, and we've expanded our relationship with CSG here at OCCU to make our vendor management much more seamless.
Brian's a big-time Oregon Duck too, by the way. So right now he's living on cloud 9, I think. But
go Ducks!
I'm a Utah Utes fan, so I'm unfortunately on a different level this year because it's not nearly as good. But Scott Fieber, Chief Strategy Officer here at Cook Solutions Group. And I've known Brian ever since I started at CSG over 9 years ago. And definitely have had the pleasure of working with him and with his teams. And really just about the collaboration, the partnership. I think he talked about it. It's a really cool environment when you can sit down with the customer and talk about, hey, what are you guys trying to accomplish, and kind of work through it together. A lot of the ideas and even some of the technology we have now originated in some just, think tank type conversations with him and his team. So it's been a good long-term relationship partnership there, and we're excited to continue it forward.
Awesome. Well, getting right into it, Brian and Scott, I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the issues you notice with having a lot of different vendors, like especially with maybe like managing all of them and having the resources to handle all of them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can start from the financial institution side. And the more vendors you have, the more management overall you have to do on the back end. And all of us who have to do vendor reviews on an annual basis know that they're time consuming, and you have to have a lot of staff hunting down different documents and combing through those documents, putting things together for regulators. And then there's the relationship side of things, and having to know who to contact when there's issues, or even when you want to expand products or services, or ask about making adjustments to your current stack that you're working on. It makes it much easier to be able to go to a single contact and have those conversations. And then especially bring them in from a strategy perspective. So talking about what are we looking to do in the next 3 to 5 years, and how might that vendor partner be able to support that? And for us, CSG has been great to be able to pull in and do some of that work. We meet fairly frequently with the team to talk about our strategies and how CSG may be able to support those. And we'll start with a vendor partner like CSG when we need to look for expansion and different opportunities out there.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is I think, Brian touched on it a little bit, is the time, right? With today's day and age, with how fast we're evolving on technology and how much demand is on everybody and everyone wearing multiple hats at organizations, like it just seems to me like that's the more vendors you have, the more of a time suck it is to try to manage them all, right? To your point, from the legal side all the way through to innovation and meetings and you name it, it can be exhausting. I think the other piece too that I've at least found in working with our customers too is just the ability to collaborate, innovate is a different animal there, right? So being able to, like, for example, instead of let's say you want to go down an initiative with a new technology, you want to solve a certain problem you're faced with at the credit union or bank. Trying to then wrangle in 4 or 5 different vendors to kind of get them all to work so the different technologies work together can be, a nightmare and super costly. And again, a time suck on a lot of things. And so again, if you've got the right partner that potentially has multiple technologies that you could leverage all of those and just work one-on-one, to me, it seems like it could be a easier, quicker, cost-effective way to go about doing things. It just seems like sometimes we maybe go to a trade show, we find something new and shiny, and then we implement a new vendor versus maybe going back to those, prime partners that you have and say, hey, is this something you guys can do? Are you interested in doing it with us? And kind of keeping that more strategic than just kind of piecemealing a lot of different things together and kind of having that vendor creep, slowly come about.
Sure. I wanted to lean a little bit more into that cost question because there's a lot of concerns over costs. Like someone can say, well, maybe if I shop around, I might get a better deal on this one versus that one versus going to one vendor. So can you talk a little bit about the cost issue?
Yeah, you always have to have costs front of mind. And especially if you can bundle a number of services, there's usually some opportunity there to negotiate some costs down. And you've got to think of it both from the hard cost and the soft cost side. If you need to have different staff to be able to manage a specific vendor, that can be costly as well, as we're looking at the overhead costs from our teams. And so really, starting with some of those existing vendors can be a great place. But then you also always have to keep them honest as well. Scott won't love me saying that, but you can't just have them bid against themselves in some instances. Some it works out well. Hey, we need this service. We need it quickly. And an existing vendor can usually bring something to market much more quickly. So you've got to evaluate different strategies against those OpEx considerations as well.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I just keep thinking of like these insurance commercials lately you see on football, right? All the bundle and save and all that type of stuff. Like it's interesting, like from an insurance perspective, hey, you bundle home and auto, like you get discounts across the board, right? CSG obviously does a lot within security, a lot within the ATM space, a lot of other cash automation technologies. And so, yes, we like to pass those savings on because, at the end of the day, it's actually cheaper for us too, right? And allows us to manage. So again, as part of being a partner is saying, hey, if we're all winning together. But on the same note, like, there's times where, the cheapest isn't always the best either, right? So you kind of get what you pay for. I think we've seen that, at least from our perspective, sometimes we're not the cheapest option, but looking into all the other pieces, like Brian's mentioning, like the back end soft costs and other stuff that goes into it outside of just the hard cost of the product or the service you're getting, that should all be taken into consideration. I think sometimes you look at that holistic picture, it should, again, in theory, be more cost effective across the board for the end user.
And I would add to that, the service side is really important. And CSG was a great partner for us from that service perspective. And we had teller cash recyclers, TCRs, that were kind of an old legacy, and some of the service had migrated to the actual vendor partner who had the hardware, and their service was terrible. We'd have machines down for a week or longer, and we gladly paid a little bit more for CSG to service those because they'd get them up within 24 or 48 hours if there were issues. And so you also have to take the service side into the cost as well. What does it mean if a ATM is down for a week and a half? That can be pretty detrimental from a member experience perspective. And so we've got to balance that high level of service as well, and being able to have that dialogue with a vendor like CSG to make sure that service levels are being hit and met.
Could I flip the script, Brad, on it and just ask Brian? You just got me thinking, Brian, on this, like on the member experience side, have you guys been able to quantify that much? I'm just curious, like, how much does that cost you essentially? Like if a TCR is down for a week or an ATM is down, or does that member experience impact in the brand reputation? Like, is there any way to quantify that you guys have found?
We haven't from a hard dollar quantifiable. We did have net promoter scores for a while. We've now built our own what we call return on member experience. That's an in-house. We take about 20 different data points, and we will see a impact to that return on member experience if a machine is down for an extended amount of time, especially if it's a single point of failure. Mm-hmm. Now, we strategically have tried to move away from single point of failures when it comes to ATMs, because the ATMs have become an important channel for many members. And so we've eliminated some of that risk, but we do still have some of those that if that one machine is down, we will see those return on member experience scores take a hit. And with that, we do have a correlation to retention based on the return on member experience. So there is some cost there, but I wouldn't be able to give hard dollars.
Okay. I always appreciate someone kind of going against Net Promoter Score a little bit for something a little better. But so I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the primary advantages of moving towards one vendor as like a one-stop shop. You've already referred to some of them, but can we dive a little deeper?
Yeah, for us, it's having that single point of contact to be able to work on the service issues and the strategic components to it. That for me is a first, and then there's the relationship component. So a team like CSG, I have about 4 contacts there that if there's something really happening that we need some help with them, I can get on the phone and call them right away. I'll use a great example. A number of years ago, I had my kids in Disneyland, and I'm sitting in line for the Star Wars ride, and all of a sudden I got a call from Brian Cook, which doesn't happen very often. And what had happened was the CSG tech who was out servicing one of our ATMs noticed a skimming device. And without contacting anyone else from the credit union, they had sent techs out to every single one of our ATMs to determine who had been hit with a skimming device. And it made us leaps and bounds ahead of finding out this skimming group that had been hitting our ATMs across the network. And I literally was able to manage that entire incident while I was standing in lines at Disneyland and not having to stress my family out. We still got to enjoy the trip. And there's not many partners where the CEO is going to send you, call you and contact you. I think Brian was even in Hawaii himself. I think it was a spring break time or something. But we were all working remotely to rectify a situation that could have been very damaging for the credit union. And it ended up, yes, we had a lot of work to do, but because of that proactive nature, ended up being a lot less of an impact than it could have been.
We call Brian Mr. Fix-It internally. That's his nickname. So it's like in his nature to like roll up his sleeves and fix whatever happens outside. But for me, Brian, I think I keep going back to the ability to innovate and just integrate things, right? So Brian mentioned earlier our SAN solution stands for Suspicious Activity Notification, similar to this skimming issue, right? So CSG takes care of their ATMs and their ITMs, as well as their video surveillance. And because we do both of those things, we're then able to integrate the ATM software in with the video surveillance software and do behavior analytics like that. So we can tell if someone walks up to the ATM and is doing something suspicious. In some cases, it's installing a skimming device, or in other cases, it may be vandalism or, cash trapping or software attacks or whatever it might be, right? But without that integration there, like it severely limits our ability to be the right partner for the credit union also, because we can only do, one little scope here. Or again, if we want to be able to expand that, try to then work with another vendor or 2 other vendors or 3 other vendors, it just adds time and complexity and cost at the end of the day to everything. So for me, I think that's huge. Like we look at just those relationships that we have with customers like OCCU, where they do the broad scope of what CSG does. And that ability to really then innovate and move to that whole next level is totally different than someone that just does a single line with us, for example. I would give another example too. Recently, I was just working with a bank who asked us to kind of go out there and help with the ATM installations portion of it. And part of that whole just management of it, right, is they had one vendor coming in to hook up the alarm. They had another vendor then going up to show up to hook up the cash or install the cash, bring the cash, right? Another one to load the software, and then us to then install the machine. Is like, man, you got to wrangle 4 different companies, probably even 5 in case for them as well for training, just to get a single ATM installed. Like it's just, in my opinion, it's like, it's nonsense. I mean, why can't CSG just do it all for you and just get it done? And to me, I can't imagine that's any more expensive than trying to manage 4 or 5 different companies to do, again, a single task in that perspective. So to me, I think it's all the above, right? You got the innovation, the integration. I think that's the main piece. And the Brian side, like just being able to have those strategic conversations, but a partner that's kind of both ways, right? Where since you have the technology, we can then innovate together, but then also understand their needs and then innovate, as we go and kind of form our roadmap, I guess, essentially together versus us saying, hey, here's our products, which one do you want? They may not fit or not because we haven't really had that conversation, right?
And I think, Scott, to your point, also looking outside of the box to try to leverage some of the solutions we already have. The sand solution was a great one. That actually came as a result of the skimming event that we talked about. That's kind of how we worked together to come up with that. And Brad, you had mentioned something different, the Net Promoter Score. As we were moving away and building our return on member experience, I was talking to our business intelligence team. We have a very smart business intelligence team here at OCCU that does a lot of really great data analytics. And talking to Casey, our SVP, I said, we have really nice Pico cameras. Do you think we could get facial sentiment of people who are in the branch? And so we've been piloting that right now. We're not identifying who the members are, but we are gathering the data of, are people having smiles or are they upset based on their face? And we've partnered with Levi, who's also wicked smart on the CSG team, to start to figure out how we can do that. We've been in the middle of a core conversion, so we haven't fine-tuned all of that. But we are at least gathering the data on the back end. And once the team gets their head above water and can start analyzing it, I envision that being part of our return on member experience as well.
It's been kind of like a soapbox thing for us actually lately, because similar concept, right? Customers say, hey, I want to get a better idea of what the experience is inside the branch. We go out to find other vendors. Meanwhile, like, look at the existing technology you already have. And video surveillance has been one of those things where it's like, hey, I can use video surveillance now for more than just, if I got robbed or if there was a security event, let me see the footage. To your point, now you can use it for anything: foot traffic, sentiment, marketing analytics, heat mapping. Like, there's so much you can do now with it just to get a better idea from a retail or marketing perspective than what we typically looked for in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
All really great points. And I wanted to ask, so how would you answer organizations that say, well, how do I know I'm getting the best deal from one vendor? And how can I ensure that they're going to meet all my security needs? How would you answer that question, Scott or Brian?
I'll let Scott go first on this one.
Yeah, that's
I think you got to put your money where your mouth is too, right? So we've coined the term a single hand to shake instead of one throat to choke, because honestly, it should be that way. Like, we like saying, hey, our customers give us hugs, not handshakes, is because we gotta perform at the end of the day, right? So yes, cost is one thing, but at the end of the day, like to Brian's point, you got to have that trust there. You've got to say, like, hey, are you actually going to perform with that? And so I would say, yeah, I mean, I'm not here advocating saying, hey, go in fresh with one new vendor and do everything that they do, and then like potentially put yourself at risk, right? Like, start slow, get a thread or two going with them, see how it works, and then slowly over time build that up. Like, Brian talked about, this has been 20 years in the making, right? We didn't just say, hey, tomorrow, like, buy everything that CSG has. Because again, I personally wouldn't let him do it. Like, I feel like that'd be a bad decision, right? So I think there's really no guarantee, unfortunately. Like, you can't have a sit down meeting for an hour and really know much about a company until you actually put them to the test. And so for us, that's why I think from the very beginning, we've had this idea of a 30-day out, no penalty clause in all the agreements that we do. Is we don't believe in tying people to long-term contracts and having them hate their vendors. Like, it just blows my mind when we go meet with customers, like, oh yeah, we're still in here with so-and-so. It's like, you hate every minute and you're counting the days until that contract expires. Like, that's just no way to do business. And so Brian, from the very beginning, has always said, that's not, if you don't want to do business with CSG, then you don't have to do business with CSG. Go on and do something different. So for us, it's proving it every month, not just at renewal, not just when contracts are up for negotiation. It's every single month, every single day, gaining that trust. And then I think the money and everything else will follow if that works out.
And I think from the financial institution side, look at renewals as a great opportunity to explore those partners and see what they can do. So if you're marginal with a particular vendor that you have today, and that contract is coming due in the next 12 to 18 months, look at your existing partners to see if there might be a way to consolidate and who might be that best partner to consolidate. So that's even a philosophy we have even outside of the CSG relationship side of things. Can be true for your online banking and mobile provider. Okay, who are the partners that they may be partnering with that may be a right fit for this? So going and looking at that landscape and knowing your vendor relationships across the board is really important as you look to meet the strategies for your financial institution.
Yeah, and so I want to move on to the very last question, which is, can you all talk a little bit about what sort of all-in-one services the Cook Solutions Group provides for banks?
Yeah, I'd be happy, unless you want to talk, Brian, about kind of our experience, but
Go for it,
yeah.
Scott.
So I try to, it's funny because we just had Thanksgiving, and this is one of the challenges I had to our team was like, hey, when you're sitting at Thanksgiving dinner and grandma asks, what do you do for a living? Like, it's kind of a hard question to answer at CSG because we do so much. And so from our perspective, it's really, the all-in-one kind of conversation is really kind of, if you take the roof off of a branch, I mean, everything on the inside, we can take care of. And I think sometimes it's not even the sexy stuff, right? It's the lock work, and it's the ATM rigging, or it's the, under counter steel, or, some of these just things that sometimes can become a little bit of a niche. But for us, again, it's all about being able to integrate those different pieces of technology together. And so again, whether it's integrating your teller cash recyclers in with video surveillance, or your ATMs in, or your alarm and your access control with video surveillance so they can communicate together, or processing your checks all the way through to your ATMs and ITMs, and providing the services along to install those and host the servers that are needed. Like the breadth of technologies is pretty wide from us. We like to say, hey, don't stress about like, hey, what's all the stuff that CSG does, as much as kind of what Brian talked about earlier. Let's just sit down and have a conversation. We kind of pride ourselves in being an industry disruptor by solving complex problems through simple solutions, right? So we know everyone's got some pretty complex problems that are happening all the time, right? And they're constantly evolving. Our goal at CSG is provide whatever simple solution we can do to help achieve that.
Awesome. You all gave some really great insights today, and I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate having you on, Scott and Brian. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you for having us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, guys, and really appreciate it. And once again, this was Brian Alfano and Scott Fieber. Thank you so much.